Hey, so Sunday I talked about the parable of the unhelpful friend, and if you were here, I gave a somewhat idiosyncratic reading of that parable. I gave a somewhat idiosyncratic reading of that parable. It's certainly not my own. There are lots of other scholars and theologians that read it this way as well, but it is maybe a little less common. And that's the idea that Jesus is not saying that God is like your neighbor who needs to be woken up. The divine doesn't need to be shaken from slumber to respond to your prayers. Instead, the whole point is that God is not like that. God responds to your audacity, the fact that you come before God and knock. The story isn't about persistence. The story is about God. God is different than anything you've experienced before. And there's a couple clues in there that I think lead us in that direction. They're a little technical, so I didn't get into them on Sunday, and let's just be honest here, I ran out of time. So here we are. 2 clues that lead me to read the parable this way. Now, the first is pretty technical. When Jesus talks about the friend, he says he will not get up and give you the bread that you need because of friendship. And the word that he uses there, or the text uses in Greek, is dia, because of, or he will not get up through your friendship to give you bread. Okay, that's expected, that's normal. That's sort of normal Greek speak. We expect to see that. But when he changes to the second response, he says, but surely he will get up because of your shameless audacity. And here he uses the term dia ge. And that ge is a signifier that contrasts something with another. But in oratory performance, what that signifies is a change in pitch or tone. It's sort of like an emphasis you make to say, hey, listen, I'm really contrasting things here. And that little clue tells us that Jesus is not just saying that God will change when you are persistent. What he's saying is these are 2 completely different scenarios. The first is where you might go to a friend and ask for help, and that friend might respond based on the social calculus of whether you've been a good enough friend or not. But I tell you, this is something completely different. And that's actually the second clue. Jesus says, but I tell you. And that's something we should notice from Jesus before. It's one of his catchphrases. You have heard it said, but I tell you. Here he only uses half of that phrase, but I think that should clue us in that Jesus is telling us something that's unexpected. We expect God to act like anyone else, to respond to us based on our persistence or whether we have something to offer to them, but he's saying, I tell you, things are very different with the divine. God's not interested in how long you ask. God's not interested in how long you bang on the door. God's not interested in what you have to offer in this relationship. God is only interested in the fact that you stand there unashamed to be there, knowing that you need help and trusting that God will help you. And so because of these 2 things, this little quirk in the Greek language that tells us there is a major contrast happening, and this but I tell you that should clue us into the idea that Jesus is switching gears here. I think what Jesus is saying in this parable is this. You need help. You go to a friend. You expect that they might turn you down because it's the middle of the night. But I tell you that with God, everything is different here. And that's really what prayer is about. It's about knowing that we can go to God whenever we need help, completely unashamed to be there, trusting that God is good. Hope that helps.